the clinching Game 7 Western Conference semifinals. I'm sure if you're listening, you all saw it. The Nuggets had a 20-point second half lead, a 15-point halftime lead. They just ran out of gas. Jamal Murray ran out of gas. Nikola Jokic ran out of gas. And the Minnesota Timberwolves walked their behinds down. Gary, just like I know how I felt watching it from the arena, and of course, when you're going to feel a certain way being in the atmosphere. But when you watched it, Gary, what did you see?
Yeah, I just saw a Denver team that just seemed like all of the hoopla, obviously winning the title, partying all summer, coming in, just being the hunted, and then falling behind 0-2 at home, just all of that, quite honestly, just caught up with them at halftime, it seemed like. And then Jokic was kind of resorted to shooting three-pointers. Murray looked 2 steps slow. And as I think everybody's been concerned about Denver was, well, what are the rest of the guys going to do when those 2 guys are kind of slowing down? And the answer last night was absolutely nothing. I mean, that was, that was not a good performance from Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, all those guys. That was I'm trying to quantify it to like a music group where the lead singer is doing everything and the other dudes are just see what they're trying to do to stay on beat. Like that's just kind of how it was. Like every now and then some other member's got to sing a song, right? He's got to, there was Michael had his Jermaine, right? Like there was nothing that those guys did. And then you could feel Minnesota kind of sensing vulnerability, smelling blood. And those guys are so deep. And you can just tell that they felt like, okay, this is our game. That run at 12-13-0 run after it was 58-38, you could just see Denver saying, this is all we got.
Yeah, I think, for one, when Jamal Murray, emptied the tank in the first half, you're looking around and you're like, man, if he's got nothing left, Denver has nothing left. And, just to do a quick reset, for the 6th straight year, we're going to have a new champion. We have not had a repeat champion since the 2017-18 Golden State Warriors. And for the first time that I can remember, now I don't have a stats and information guru or anything like that, but for the first time I can remember, Gary, this will be the first Final Four, the first conference finals on both sides, where you don't have a current or present most valuable player. So I feel like, in some ways, we've been talking about changing of the guard for the past 3 or 4 years with Steph and KD and LeBron, and saying, okay, when is someone going to take the mantle? When is someone going to knock these guys off of the stage? Technically, they weren't quite knocked off in the way that we wanted them to be, but they're just not the last dudes standing anymore. They're not the dudes that are sort of, Gary, they're not the standard that you have to go through to get to where you want to get to. And now you see Minnesota, you said it, they were built to beat Denver. They were built by Tim Connolly. They got all those 7-footers. You got all those long, rangy wings. And now I'm looking at them, and we're going to get to Boston, of course, in a minute. Gary, they're by far, to me, the most complete team in terms of like depth and everything else. I don't feel like there's a more complete team left out of the Final Four.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, really. I think Minnesota, but I ain't going to lie, did Minnesota go into camp saying, we're going to make the Western Conference Finals? Probably not. I think they probably went into camp and said, we want to get past the first round. We want to be a factor in the West. No one picked Minnesota to be the tie with the best record in the West. No one saw this coming because in previous years, Minnesota's been a team that's known to be choked. They have players who couldn't come through. Obviously, the Rudy Gobert thing was considered a failure for the last couple of years. Karl-Anthony Towns was, is he a star? Is he not? Is it time for him to move on? Ant-Man was great, but it's like, is that enough to carry this team? But just like you said, just the personnel that they've added, the Mike Conley acquisition, man, that's big. Guys like Kyle Anderson, McDaniels is just I've always liked his game. I think, he's just one of those guys that somewhere along the line, he's going to get really paid because that dude does a lot. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, all those guys fit in the roles. And as much as I think Chris Finch has been criticized and was he the right coach and choice? And, coming from Toronto, he has put those guys in positions to all succeed. Even Rudy Gobert, and obviously Rudy gets his share of heat. So I do think Minnesota is probably the most complete team. Them or Boston, those two teams played two very good games during the regular season. So those are the two finals. It's going to be a great series. I think it went to overtime in Minneapolis early in the season, and it went down to the wire in Boston a couple of months later. So those two teams, I think, are pretty even. But you got to give Minnesota credit here. I mean, because fall behind 3-2, losing 3-0, they could have mailed it in. And they definitely could have mailed it in for Game 7 in Denver, because what you're looking at is a defending champion playing at home. It didn't fall behind by 20 points. But you got to give all those past, skeletons of just being a choking team, a team that can't play well in the clutch, a team that doesn't ever have enough, a team with all these lottery picks that can't ever put it together. Those days are over. I mean, Minnesota's a factor.
Gary, you touched on so much there, and I think Minnesota's resilience, just from being in the building, feeling like, it's a 20-point lead. We're all sitting in the press box, in that sort of 100 level. It's me, it's Mark Spears, it's Sean Powell, Sam Amick, Dave McMenamin. Like, all of us are sort of sitting up there and conversing. John Krasinski from The Athletic, we're all talking, and we're like, man, they're just going to lay down like this. This is just going to be another one of those games. And they just kept playing. Like, Gary, even when they were down 20, they were doing the right things. I'm like, even Ant started off like 1 of 6, and then he was 1 of 9. But we felt like he was doing the right things. So a couple shots you felt like he was pressing. But by and large, we felt like he was making the right reads. He was still defending. And sooner or later, like, the depth of Minnesota was going to win out over Denver, especially when you look at Christian Brown was the only reserve who played heavy minutes. He played 19 minutes. They didn't go to Peyton Watson. They barely played Justin Holiday. They barely played Reggie Jackson. You put a lot on Jokic and a lot on Jamal Murray, who's still on that calf. It just felt like the perfect storm in a way. And I know people want to bang on Denver because maybe you don't like Michael Malone because of how he gets down. I really like Michael Malone. I didn't think he handled the moment in the press conference well. But after that moment, he really opened up. He was really accommodating and answering the questions and actually being vulnerable, which you wouldn't necessarily expect out of someone like that.